you have. We surpassed about 500 comments, which is unbelievable, and keep them coming. But I want to go over some of your user comments because sometimes they're just too big. I can't type. Okay. So one of my first ones is question. It says on a fourth order bandpass subwoofer box, should they be screwed? Fourth order is a sub box that has two chambers, has a subwoofer on one side, and the other side has a port. Okay, kind of two boxes stacked on each other, I guess is the best way to put it. And he asks, should the compartment that has the subwoofer in it, should it be gasketed and screwed? Yes, 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 yes. Now, why I say that is everything should be serviceable. Okay, that's the big one. Because if you sealed it all up in the sub box and made it airtight as perfect as possible, you won't be able to service it if you have a problem with that woofer. Okay, so yes, I recommend, like if it's a rectangle, say the inside, you have some screws that can come off, and yes, use some sort of gasketing material to squish on the back plate so you can get at that woofer if need be. I hope you never have to, but you never know. Next question. All right, so this one comes from CJ Shilids, I'm going to say, and later on during the re-recording of this, I'll have all these questions up on the screen, so keep that in mind. A nutshell is, he says to me, I did a video on setting gains with a multimeter, and other creators have as well, all right? But does that mean it's the perfect way? No. I actually think the perfect way is to use a multimeter. Sorry, excuse me. I'll rewind. An oscilloscope. But a lot of people don't have an oscilloscope is the biggest problem. All right. So that's what makes the biggest difference. And he says, you know, if you use a multimeter, you're leaving a little bit of extra on the table, which is call it like say 5 or 10 horsepower in horsepower ways of thinking. Okay. So I agree with him. But the way to get you, like if you put your amplifier in on a Friday and you wanted to learn how to do it real quick, say you borrowed a multimeter, you ran to, you know, your local hardware store, you can do that. And there's nothing wrong with that, and get it going. Now, is there extras in there? Yes, there is. Absolutely extras in there. But an oscilloscope is the perfect way, but it's not accessible for a lot of people, okay? I hope that answers your question, bud, on that one. Now, I do get ones, and I put this on here because this gentleman said, I do a lot of speaker tests and comparisons, as you know, right? So one had said, how about Beyma? Now, it's Beyma. I don't know that brand, and I'm going to guess he's from somewhere around the world. And that's the one thing to keep in mind sometimes. A lot of people throw me brands to do, but is it available in my area is the biggest question, right? All right. Next one. He goes, the gentleman says, I bought a truck recently that came with those CS kicker speakers. They're the yellow box ones, as I call them. And he installed them. They were installed already. They sounded pretty good off of the deck power or head unit power. But once he added into an amplifier, he wanted to change them out because he didn't think they sounded good anymore. Now, this is a problem that you have to think about. When you have a factory head unit, source unit, CD player, whatever term you want to use, you are roughly, let's just call it 15 to 20 watts of power, okay? So that is something to consider because you're not putting 75 or 100 watts on it. So like in a recent shootout I did one with Hertz and Kicker and Pioneer, that's what it was. And if I said it was amplified, I might have chose the Hertz over the Kicker. Now, there's nothing against Kicker. Please, there's so many levels. I'm just saying as a good example. Also, another one is the Hertz. Hertz Daichi speakers, or Daichi you see, they are phenomenal on deck power. They're great. I love them. I think they're the best, one of the best OEM upgrades you can make. But you put it on an amplifier, and they get screechy. And I sold them for 7 years, so I think I can say that without anyone getting mad. They're not made to get a lot of power. And so this is something when I'm working together on a sheet for you guys that you can download, and that's one of the questions will be when replacing your speakers. Are you going to add an amplifier? Do you think you are? Because it's two trains of thought. Am I just upgrading an OEM speaker to make it sound better, or am I upgrading for better sound down the road? And that is one question. So his question could be, yes, they didn't sound good when he had an amplifier. And we go, but the internet says everything sounds better with an amplifier. I agree, but it all depends on how loud you're going to play it. The next question came on the high to low converter that's designed for an amplified speaker. So what he's referring to, and I'm going to use the B&W 3 series. If you ever see them, newer ones between about 2000 and up, you'll see the trunk, and on the left-hand side, there's a factory amplifier. And it's actually a very loud and good factory amplifier. But if you use a standard high to low converter, and that typically is going to take, let's just say 5 volts in to make things easy, okay? And what you do is you take a multimeter and you set it on AC, and you put it on the speaker outputs, and you turn up the stereo to say to 3/4 volume, and you see how much voltage is coming out of it. And he's right. If you use one at, say, $20 or some kind of thing in there or less, very inexpensive, that it's not made to take the higher voltages of a factory amplifier. So, for example, the B&W ones do about 20 volts out. And so if you go back to my analogy of doing a 5-volt one, it melts them. And that's the thing you see on the end. Oh, my high level melted or had a problem or it clipped. You can even do this with some DSPs, by the way. They can't take 20 volts of input. They have to take less. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right, and so if you do have a factory amplifier, but honestly, buy a good high-level controller. Kicker makes a key lock one. Audison makes a very nice one, or something they'll call it Connection. They make a very nice one. Like, look for a good high-level adapter that can take like 10 volts or more in, and you'll be fairly safe. All right, I hope that answers that question. All right, so here is one. It says, when your phone's connected to CarPlay, it automatically starts playing. Yes. I don't know if there's a setting, but Android Auto 2, Apple CarPlay, all of them, as soon as you sit in the car, they automatically start going. I don't know if there's a setting or not on that one. When I do my next head unit review, I'll look into it and see if that can be solved or not. I'm sorry, that's not a definite answer, but it does seem to be how it all works. Just like if you start your car and your radio's on, your radio starts off where it left off, same as Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. All right, now here is one talking about equalizers. This is the one I wanted to get to kind of the most. He talks about an older Pioneer radio called an 8000, a DEHX 8000. And he says when he goes into equalizer settings, and I'm going to paraphrase, okay, instead of going, say, 20 hertz, 40 hertz, 80 hertz, 120 hertz, and those are frequencies, and the numbers like that are usually called 1/3 per octave. I'm going into the weeds. He says his head unit doesn't go any lower than 30 hertz and he wants to boost it more. That's what happens when you run into limitations on some head units or even equalizers or even some DSPs. So it's very important to look at those products on what bands you can adjust. Some of them, a standard now is 13 bands. You can only adjust 13 bands of equalization and you can't change them. They're a fixed frequency. Nowadays, well, way back when, the kind of standard was 31 or 30 bands of equalization. So that allowed you to make lots of corrections, but also it got you in trouble really fast as well. His particularly was boosting below 20 hertz. I don't recommend boosting those low frequencies unless you really know what you're doing. Because, for example, if you have a subwoofer and it's ported, and the port is tuned to 30 hertz, it'll have a big boost in output at 30 hertz, and then it drops off really fast. It's because the port is making the 30 hertz note, not the speaker. I know I'm going a little bit deep, but at 20 hertz, that woofer will come unloaded, like the box doesn't hold pressure anymore below the port tuning frequency. So if you boost it at 20, that woofer is going to launch and have some problems. All right. So just keep that in mind. But yes, that's why outboard equalizers or DSPs or whatever term you want to use are very popular, to give you more control over not just using a head unit. Now, that being said, I think the new Stinger head unit has 30 bands of equalization built into it. So it is getting more and more common. So the gentleman asked me here, he goes, I got my dad's 2001 B&W 3 Series trying to add a subwoofer. So just like I said, that obviously has an amplifier in it. It is very important to use a high-level adapter. And a lot of those B&Ws, like I said, is located if I'm facing the trunk on the left-hand side. And then the amplifier is there. You can get the wires there. You can even sneak the power there. People don't like to hear that. But because the power is on the right-hand side, they're actually quite easy to do it all. And then there's a signal coming to that amplifier you can get off it. But remember, you need to use a high-level adapter or a line-out converter that can take high voltage in. The gentleman has an 06 Mustang, and he has the shaker system. And he says he has a set of subwoofers and tweeters, and he doesn't use the door speakers. And he wants to add 5 1/4 door speakers, and wondering if the spot where the subs used to be, because he had subs in the doors, if you didn't know in those ones, would be rather used for mid-bass. Now, this is a good question. Okay, mid-bass, bass, all that sort of stuff can be determined by the frequencies in which the speakers play. If it's going to be in the door, you can essentially go, and I'm giving you a rough, from 100 hertz all the way up to 20K. No problem. Chances are, though, he says he has a tweeter. So usually he'll have it in the door. So if you ran it from 100 hertz to, let's just say 1K, 3K, that's 3K or 1K kilohertz, the tweeter would take over to go from 1 or 3K all the way up to 20K. So you can add anything you want. If I had room for a bigger speaker, I would put a bigger speaker in that door, yes, to get as much mid-bass as possible, because that kick drum and low bass to keep up with those subwoofers, I believe, is really important. That's my opinion. You know what I mean? But you'll find that's why people put 8 inches in the doors or 6.5 inches in the doors. I wouldn't put like a 5 1/4. I think you're wasting your time. If your budget, you can get some 8s if it fits and it fits easily and not too intrusive. That's what I would do. Or go with a good 6.5. It's your all-rounder, very inexpensive way to get in there. Now, here is one that he is trying to set a subwoofer box up. And he talks about, but his rock music's 45 hertz, but he wants to tune it down to 30 hertz. This is where ported boxes are a little different. Ported boxes are tuned to have a certain frequency that has a big boost in it, and yes, they're louder. Generally, they're louder. If I have a single 10 in a sealed box and a single 10 in a ported box, the ported box will be 3 dB loud, which is about me talking like this, and then me talking like this. It's not huge, but it's enough to make a big difference. And some guys have figured out ways to get 6 and 9 dB out of it. But that makes it work really good at that frequency. That's the problem. So if it boosts, say, 9 dB of output at 30 hertz or 45 hertz, let's say, it'll sound incredible for Def Leppard or AC/DC, but it might really sound terrible for rap style of music. Okay? So that's why, when in doubt, if you think you do a whole bunch of different music and you want to have it work for a full range, go sealed with lots of power. Power is cheap nowadays. You can get a 500 or 1,000 watt amplifier now for usually $250 or less even. And so go sealed, and then that way you'll have the same amount of woofer output, say, for AC/DC and rock, and the same amount for rap or anything like that. Now, if you did boost it a little bit and you had added an equalizer, a sealed will give you a little bit, so if you wanted to boost it, say at 30 hertz or even a little bit lower, just give it a little bit extra love, a little bit more output, you can, and you won't get yourself in trouble like you will with a ported box. Okay? Sealed, good power, try that. All right? This one says, he goes, should I RTA the whole vehicle or building to help find out his low frequencies and make a direction for the sub to be ported. So he's asking, is it loud? Essentially, he's saying what a lot of people do is they put a woofer in the car and they play a sweep, so it goes and down, and they look for the loudest frequency. And then he's talking about putting the box forward facing, so towards the tail lights. So, excuse me, rear facing towards the tailgates, or forward facing towards the headlights. Typically, I'm going to tell you 9 times out of 10, it is louder facing the taillights. And it's generally, the reason is this, the pressure, if I go like this, because pretend I'm looking at the taillights, it goes off the taillights and the wave comes back off of it and makes it a bigger wave and gives you more output and pressurizes the cab different. Now, I do know a lot of vehicles nowadays have, say, at the rear seats, they have 2 subwoofers and it plays towards the headlights and they're pressuring it. But that's a whole different animal. They're going for sheer loudness and not much just sound and having a good time. I would not worry about RTAing a car. I would just put in like a good sized driver, like 212s ported, or even 212 sealed, 210s ported, even 310 sealed. It'll give you more than enough output to compensate for any kind of problem you have in the car by far than doing all the twiggy stuff to get it. All right. Another gentleman here is talking about, he has an 86 Ford Escort, his little car, and he goes, the sound from his 5 1/4 down by his feet. He wants to know, since pretend I'm in the car, speakers are here, and the other speakers are, say, twice as far away. Should I wire these out of phase? And out of phase means to make it positive. And so if this is positive, negative, or correct, so positive wire is connected to the positive and negative is connected to negative, the one that's far away, should I go negative, positive to negative, and negative to positive to make it go kind of like, instead of going like this, so the speakers go whoomph, whoomph, whoomph at the same time, he wants them to go whoomph, 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 okay? It's a very old school way of thinking, and it has worked. And I can't say that, it used to say as if it's twice as far to wire it out of phase, but this is thinking from a long time ago, or things taken from theater or concert kind of applications. In a car, I would make everything in phase, period. Make everything in phase. That's it. Now, the odd time, you might be wondering, like, why, say I fade front to rear. So I have door speakers and I have rear door speakers, and suddenly it's louder. When I fade it all the way to the front, I have more bass. And then when I go to the rear door speakers, I have less bass. That means the rear speakers might be out of phase, either mechanically, which means physically positive, negative out of phase, or acoustically, which means on a electrical level. Okay, and I'm trying to keep this easy, guys. Okay, so, and then in that case, you might wire the back speakers out of phase to bring everything in phase. Generally, you want everything to be all going in at the same time. All right, pressuring it, making the fun of the music. All right. I know I'm not trying to confuse you with that answer, but with everything in more amplitude, more in phase, generally is yes, it's better in every single way. Now, I want to say thank you for these questions. I do appreciate it. And there's a lot of times I can't talk about this, just, with finger, and also you can hear the reflections in my voice, so to speak, when answering these questions. I hope you can send me as much as you want. I will sit down and answer them. Honestly, when I get about 10, I'll do it. But if it's a big one, I might even dedicate a video to it. So please, in my post section or in the comments, please leave your questions. I love to answer them. A few of you have asked me who am I and what I have, what kind of credentials I do have. On my video, you will see I'm a 30-year veteran of car audio, or even a little bit longer. I installed for many years. I won 2 world championships for sound quality. I got a best of show at the world championships, and I won North America twice for SPL as well. So I had to think about it because the terms changed over the years. I'm quite into car audio and I love it. I've worked for manufacturing. I was a sales rep, and now I report on the industry. All right. So once again, my name's James. And what I'd love to say is, if you've subscribed to my channel or you're here right now, either way, thank you. I couldn't be doing this and getting my love of car audio out there into the world without people like you talking, asking questions, and tuning in my videos and kind of silently cheering me on. Thank you. I honestly really do appreciate it, and I hope to see you on other videos, and I do hope you comment so I can answer some more of your questions. Thanks.